So we're here to talk about the world of media, which is changing out from under us. I'll give a very brief introduction about those changes, and then what some of the things that we're doing that are either part of or facilitating the structural movements in the industry. So for starters, the prediction that television audiences would one day migrate to other platforms has been a prediction that's been made for years and years and years and just hasn't happened. So in markets like the US, where every year doom is predicted, like clockwork, over the last decade, the upfronts have gone up, the volume of viewership has gone up, and despite reach per program declining, the prices have gone up. Until this year, this is the first year that actual volume took a dip in the upfronts. Some people predicted that the volume would come back in the scatter markets in this last quarter. It never happened. The money just disappeared. And the paradigm shift that's happening overall, and many in this room will know more about it than I do, is that younger millennial audiences are first moving from television to other devices. I think that's very well understood. Millennial audiences are moving from the living room together with their family out into other rooms with their portable devices. Again, I think that's fairly well understood. I think the third point about what they're watching is not well understood. This is the paradigm shift. As we, for a number of years, thought that the millennials would watch the same television shows on other devices in other rooms. But now they have their own shows. The rise of the YouTube superstar in the last 36 months has been absolutely stunning. Stunning, unexpected, unpredictable. I've spoken to folks at YouTube, and when they launched their channel strategy a few years ago, where channels get subscribers, they did not predict or expect what was about to happen. And what is happening is that you have, call it citizen amateur entertainers, sitting in front of a webcam, just being themselves, being authentic, and creating their own programming with their own programming schedules for their audiences, which even 24 months ago were relatively modest. So if you take Zoella, she's getting a lot of press right now in the UK because not only has she built up 7 million subscribers, but she has written a book. And that book has now broken the records set by Harry Potter and a number of other big mainstream writers, called Girl Online. All of this was unpredictable. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was very easy to make content. We'd make it through big structures like traditional ad agencies, and then we distribute it through our media agencies, and millions or tens of millions of people would watch the content online. And you know, the rule of thumb was you'd, on average, want people to watch your commercial 3 times. That was the famous media rule. And heavy users could watch an ad maybe 17 times. Housewives would leave the TV on at home, might watch a detergent ad for Unilever 30 or 40 times. And those days are now gone. So the two things that are changing out from under us is, number one, the pattern of distribution is changing, as described. But also on the production side, which is what we're here to talk about, the need for a different kind of content has arisen. So it was much easier, again, 10, 15 years ago. Big companies would have strategy meetings in the spring. They'd have planning meetings in the fall where they developed storyboards. And then, once approved, they'd spend 3 or 4 months making those ads that would then be released onto television the following year. And maybe a big brand would have 1 ad, 2 ads. You know, maybe Coca-Cola had 6 ads. And they were all carefully pre-planned, and carefully released. And that went on, that was actually invented by Procter & Gamble in around 1930. It went on for decades and decades and decades and decades. It was a great system, by the way. Created a lot of value for a lot of companies and a lot of brands. It just doesn't work anymore. With the advent of social media, and again, many of the things I'm going to say I think are going to be very, very well known, maybe been repeated now for year after year, but some of the things we're going to talk about are shifting right before us. And in production, as the big captive audience begins to fragment and disappear, and people are being able to choose what they watch and choose what they share, it's no longer enough to have one piece of content. It's no longer good enough to have the big ad. There's nothing wrong with having the big ad. I think every brand should, if they can afford it, should have a big ad. But you're more and more going to need, or we, all of us, anyone who wants to communicate, you're going to need lots and lots and lots and lots of content. Brands talk about being always on, about having content that's available monthly, weekly. Obviously, things like Twitter and Instagram go out daily, if not programmed every 4 to 6 hours. And video is taking over everything. The big web publishing sites of the last 10 or 15 years are really struggling, and now the move is to video, to subscriber channels. Even Facebook, which was fairly, was originally set up as text-based. Now Facebook's big stated aim is video. Now we have autoplay on Facebook, and Facebook's going to make a big challenge on YouTube for video. And there's statistics about in the coming 24, 36 months, 90% of the entire internet will be video. So entire web propositions, you'll see businesses like BuzzFeed. I mean, I thought BuzzFeed was modern. Now all of a sudden, BuzzFeed's trying to relaunch itself because BuzzFeed was based on online publishing in a world that's moving to video. So if you look at the recent press, BuzzFeed, theoretically a leader in their space, has now raised $50 million to do what? Well, to make content, to make video, to build a production studio. So even the pioneers, 24 months go by and they're not a pioneer anymore. And all the new propositions are moving to video. All the folks that were online, all the people that were magazines moved online, thought that was hard. Now they go from online print to online video. So it's a migration after migration after migration. And these migrations used to take 10, 20, 30 years apiece, and now they're happening every 36 months. So it's quite a challenging environment. So within that environment, over the last 5 years, MOFILM and a small handful of video innovators have looked for ways to create significantly larger amounts of content, more diverse content, high quality content at a level that's affordable. Because you cannot possibly be going to, say, a McCann Erickson, and I love McCann, worked with them for years, but you can't be going to McCann Erickson every Tuesday asking for a 60-second video under the process and the price platforms that those businesses have been constructed. So crowdsourcing, again, I'm sure that many of you have heard of it. I'm sure all of you have heard of it. There's probably differing levels of understanding about it. Crowdsourcing actually began in the innovation sectors of the economy. People have been crowdsourcing ideas for a decade. Procter & Gamble has built a nice business instead of Harvard Business case studies on product innovation, where the idea of wisdom of crowds. You take a brief and you send it out to many, many people. And instead of getting one solution from a genius, maybe you get 100 solutions. And out of the 100 solutions, undoubtedly 70 or 80 are terrible. Maybe 10 or 15 are actually really quite good. Maybe 5 are exceptional, and maybe 1 is absolute genius. And so that's the premise on which crowdsourcing works, and it works in many, many endeavors. There are people that make logos that way, designs, packages, T-shirts, you name it now, and there's barely a category out there that hasn't got a set of people applying crowdsourcing or community sourcing ideas to the product. So here we are 5 years ago, and I'm just going to go straight to the MOFILM concept. Very simple. brand develops brief, gives it to a company like MOFILM. We put it on our platform and provide it. We have 60,000 filmmakers on our mailing list. 30,000 of them are active. So for every brief we get, we're able to put that in front of 30,000 serious filmmakers from Argentina to Zimbabwe. All kinds of different quality, all kinds of different material comes back. Sometimes you'll see great ideas, poorly executed. Sometimes you'll see brilliant productions that underlying the ideas aren't so great. So, but the idea, again, is that you take a brief, put it on the internet, and get dozens, if not hundreds, of ideas that come back for the brand to use. So if you fast forward 5 years, we have about 100 brands on our platform. We're doing about 6 or 7 briefs a month for companies like Visa, Coca-Cola, BP, all different categories. And the idea being that brands will get this solution to the always-on content in a world where the media is fragmenting at a reasonable price and a diverse quality. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time up front prior to opening up the conversation with John and Vivek, setting the background for this, because it is a very fast-moving and complex arena. It's worth paying attention to because it's affecting all parts of our lives, all parts of our business systems, and the results are really quite exciting in many cases. And I think probably that's as good a time as ever to show the first of a half dozen videos that we'll show. And so see if my clicker works. I'm very happy it's only got 2 buttons on it, red and green. So if I push the green button, I hope we'll take a look at one of the films from our archives, if you will. This came in a few years back for Mountain Dew and is appropriately called The Pitch.
Here we go! New Mountain Dew commercial. Crime thriller. We're at the station. Mayor's held for ransom. We already made the drop! Answer it! Detective Jones here! Yes, right away!
Mr. Smith?
No time. We take to the streets! We dodging cars! We run into traffic lights! It's crazy!
All units report to 4th and Liberty! Over!
I slide across the hood of the car to save 1.2 seconds of time! Hoo-ha! Open the door! We open the door, and there you are, the mayor. You have a time bomb strapped to your chest.
Is that a real bomb?
Quick! Evacuate all pedestrians!
You know, this is...
Get a hold of yourself,
15
Mayor.
seconds!
Enter the bomb squad!
Excuse me, ma'am.
Oh, great. Need to think here. Is it the blue wire or the red wire or the green? 5, 4, 3, 2... Bombs defused, I saved the day, I chugged the dew. End of commercial. What do you think?
You're in the wrong office.
Okay, here we go.
So we're going to go back to back here. That was a brief from about 3 years ago. Came into GSM Barcelona, a contest we did with Mountain Dew. They got about 30 selections, and that was a real classic. That was done by a 21-year-old university student from the University of Michigan with a bunch of his buddies in a dorm room. So we asked him how much it cost, and he said he can't remember, but the sandwiches, he said, weren't that expensive. So I'm actually going to go back to back and show the sizzle reel, and then we'll move on with our guests. sample of kinds of content that have come in across a wide variety of brands over the last few years onto the MOFILM platform. And with that, I'll pass the mic to John Landau.
With no question, with no
All right,
setup.
here comes the question. So in this world where traditional distribution, guaranteed distribution platforms are being shaken, and traditional ways of making content are no longer fit for purpose, as a storyteller, what would you advise the audience in this context?
I think it's very exciting because I think now you have the ability to create content and distribute it through such a multitude of different ways. And it's all about telling a story. And I think what MOFILM does in their 30, 60, or 90-second spots is really no different than what we try and do on our feature films. It's to evoke an emotional response from your audience. And I think that's the goal of any brand. And I think that's how you build up brand loyalty. I think that's how you have people remember something you've put up on the screen, or how you get them to want to repeat viewing it. That emotional response can be something about laughter, it should be something about a tear, any number of things. And it's the same thing we do with movies. When people ask me what type of movies we want to develop, I tell them we want to develop movies that have themes that are bigger than the genre. Because it's the plot you leave at the theater, and it's the theme you walk away with. So whenever you can find a theme inside of a branded entertainment on any distribution, you've succeeded.
So everyone's aware of Avatar 1. I'm not sure everyone's aware that you're making Avatars 2, 3, and 4 simultaneously. How long does it take to make an Avatar?
To make an Avatar, to make an Avatar movie?
An
Those are
Avatar
two different
movie.
questions. Avatar movies, the first movie we started prepping in 2005, and the movie came out in 2009. So it's a long cycle.
So if Marty Stano were here and he did the pitch, he did it in a few days, and then we have a lot of filmmakers that would like to emulate that and make content like that. Are there any lessons from long form that can be applied to short form, or vice versa? Are there any things when you see short form video that actually help you when you're working on a movie that takes 4 years to make?
Again, I think story is king, script is king, and I think that's the key for anything you do when you're creating content. I think we certainly learn, and I think one of the things that I would tell your filmmakers at MOFILM is get feedback from an audience. You have one perspective on it. It's your obligation to present it because you're not making any movie, any entertainment content for yourself. You're making it for an audience, and you have to be aware of how they respond. It doesn't mean you have to listen to them, but it means you have to hear them, and then you could be the interpreter and the creative arbiter of those choices.
So there's some sense that Jim Cameron is a creative savant and goes off to a mountaintop and writes all his films. Is that true, or is it a more collaborative process than that?
I think Jim will be the first to tell you that filmmaking as a whole is a collaborative experience. We stand on the shoulders of hundreds, if not thousands, of other people who work for us on the films, and Jim is a very collaborative person. What I have found is that you have to have an opinion in our business, but you can't just have an opinion. You have to be able to articulate the reasoning behind the opinion. And then people like Jim, who have the most confidence in themselves or most secure in their position, they're the ones who invite the input because they know at the end of the day, they're going to make the final decision, but nobody cares where a good idea comes from. And that's something I've learned from Jim because I've given him plenty of good ideas and he takes credit for all of them.
That's why he's so smart. So you've been our creative chairman going on 5 years now and have shared your advice with hundreds of our filmmakers, which is fantastic. I've never asked you this question before, but while you've been working on the advertising business, have you learned anything that has helped you on your Avatar film?
I think one of the keys to anything you do is communicating with people. And I think, having an opportunity to communicate with young filmmakers and to see, things that they might not yet understand and how you can help guide them and lead them and give them advice, it opens my eyes to other people on our films that I might take for granted that they have a certain knowledge about something or they sort of have a certain experience. And I find myself with more of an obligation to continue that communication and be in whatever way I can be a mentor to the people on our films, not just the people through the MOFILM.
Very good. So we'll come back in a minute to John. Want to go to our third panelist, Vivek, on Global Brand Director of Castrol Oil. Tell us, where are you guys on your journey in this marketplace that's transforming right before our eyes?
The marketplace is changing so fast. Journey seems like a very sort of generous word for it. It changes sort of almost every day. So I'd say that some things haven't changed much. So probably building brands was always about creating content and distributing it. Except that many, many years ago, you sort of worked very hard on one insight, a select group of people, got the consumer insights, gave the brief to a bunch of creative people who created one or two things for you. And that one or two pieces of content was what you ran with through different distribution channels for like pretty much a year. That's all changed now. And I think big brands, most of the billion-dollar brands that I've worked on, whether in Castrol or before that in Diageo or Unilever, you can't take choices and saying, I just go with this way of content creation and this way of content distribution. You try out many of them to try and see which are the best ways of reaching your consumers now. And I think in that sense, very often I've seen when I've been handling brands earlier, you go out to a dinner party or you're talking to people at a forum like this, and a lot of people have views on these big brands, on maybe you should try this approach. And I think this particular approach that MOFILM and others are taking invites a lot of people with fresh ideas to give you their take on the brand. And some of those might actually influence the way the brands go. So at this point of time, it's not saying that we will do this and we will not do television or won't do the big events like we did the World Cup, did sort of 30 million views with a particular event with the World Cup called Foot Khana with Neymar and so on. So we'll do all that, but some of this is bringing, I think, a certain fresh new look. And the cost of experimenting is not so high, where earlier you'd have to say, okay, I won't do this, and I'll only do this in future. I've really enjoyed the last few months where we've got these fresh new, and meeting the filmmakers was great because I saw where they're coming from. It's not like central planning. They've just got a little brief sort of from us, from you, and after that, it's just them and what they think about the brand.
So last night we had an awards event here in Singapore over down by, the Fullerton in Jing. It was great. We had 5 brands on stage or in the event, and each brand had a winning filmmaking team that had come in from various parts of the world. So the Chevrolet team had come in from South Africa. BP, you had a team. Where did they come in from?
They were around Asia, but it's a global team.
Yeah, very good. And the filmmakers were here to accept an award. Would you like to make a comment or two about the film before we roll it?
No, I think these films speak for themselves. There were 10 films we made for this, and I think we'd followed quite a democratic approach to trying to work with MOFILM on which should be the best film within the Castrol Magnatech brief. We'd sent it out to our top 10 countries, asked the marketing teams there, saying, look at these 10 films and tell us which one would you love to run in your market, and just took a straight sort of mechanistic approach on voting, and this one came out actually the best out of them.
And these filmmakers were from which country?
This one is from the US. They've come from Pittsburgh.
From Pittsburgh,
and
Pennsylvania.
Interestingly, the brand Castrol Magnatech doesn't exist in the US. And it exists in most of the parts of the world, but not in the US.
But I think that speaks to the breadth of this crowdsourcing, where you can go out there and people learn about your product and they bring a fresh view to it. And that's what I've found so exciting over the years, to see how these filmmakers take any product and how their approach is so unique so often.
All right, well, this is amazing. So this came out last night. You were the first folks to see this film. It's been top secret classified until last night won its award, and here we'll debut it on stage. So, filmmaking team from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, making a film about a product that does not even exist in their city. That's something. Here we go.
I'm Rosie Mullaney,
I'm Brandon Mullaney.
and we're inventors. Well, we try to be inventors.
We are inventors.
What? Are you serious?
My wife has a bit of a problem with stop-start traffic.
Like when you're in gridlock, or when somebody jumps right out in front of you to cross the street, or some guy cuts you off.
Stop-start traffic happens a lot more often than we really think, especially in big cities. And I wanted to come up with a solution. So here's how the invention works. So when you experience stop-start traffic and slam on your brakes, the car transforms into a state of relaxation.
Now we actually look forward to stop-start traffic.
They're like little mini dates in the car.
Every time we get in, it's like a little romantic surprise every time we slam on the brakes.
Next thing you know, I'll have to invent something for the engine.
Very good. So, young team, we talked to them about, where they're coming from, what are their aspirations, and this is an example where most of the community that we work with are aspiring filmmakers. They will have made YouTube videos. Now they're cutting their teeth on big brand advertising. They'll probably try and make short films next, and one day they aspire to make feature films and win an Oscar. So it's amazing to watch these folks on their journey. We often say that at MOFILM we're trying to get rid of our best filmmakers. We're trying to get rid of our most creative filmmakers. And the reason being that we're very pleased when out of a group of 100, say 10 really graduate up to making film and building careers or going into production houses, more traditional production houses and making a career of it. Number one, we're obviously proud that they've done great work for us, they've done great work for the brand, and that they're able to move on. But then two, through word of mouth, their collaborators and peers will hear or see what happened, and then they'll join the community to form the next generation of filmmakers to create all this kind of great content for the future. And I think that's a terrific
And Jeffrey,
example.
these filmmakers basically go out on their own, and they're not financed. I know there's certain times there are grants, but generally speaking, they go out on their own and create this content and submit it to you.
So for the first 3 years of our platform, everything was done on their own. In the past 3 years, we've introduced a modest program of grants where the best filmmakers can submit their ideas. If the brand likes them, we'll pay them $2,000 or $3,000 in seed money, and from there, they make the film and compete for bigger prizes like $10,000 in cash and running on TV and things like that.
But far less than it would ever cost to create some of these spots that you're seeing. And when you talk about, your goal is to get rid of your filmmakers, something recently I think very exciting happened with Sony PlayStation, where Sony PlayStation was looking for their Christmas ad to come out. And they were struggling with what to come up with, and they came to MOFILM to come up with something. And all of a sudden, one of MOFILM's filmmakers was directing a $2.2 million ad for Sony PlayStation.
So I'm going to tell that story in a minute, and we're going to show the ad.
Okay.
So I'm going to come back with a series of questions for you, because we weren't really qualified to do this ad, and there's a kind of a funny story there. But we've got one video to look at before it. So, and it's relevant that it's have some questions for you on it, because as everyone knows, John Landau is an Oscar winner, and we had a program brief from Chevrolet to crowdsource an ad that would run on the Academy Awards. And they were very insistent that while the Academy Awards is obviously quite Hollywood-centric, despite the international category, they were very insistent, because Chevrolet is a global brand, that this brief went to all corners of the world, and they even challenged us to promote the brief as hard as possible in places like Latin America and across Asia, which we did. We got hundreds of submissions, some really great stuff, and they ended up actually using all sorts of the content that came in for social platforms on Twitter and Facebook and all sorts of different uses, because they got so much good content. But it was really exciting that the ad that came in for the Oscars was done by again, a very young creative team in Seoul, Korea. And see if it's still there. So let's take a look at this. This is called Speed Chaser. Again, creative team, Seoul, Korea. And this ran on the Academy Awards last year in the United States. So it's interesting to note that, that ad has quite a different look and feel than what you might expect from a classic television ad, especially ones running in the US and especially ones running on the Academy Award. So the brand is present, but they're not bashing you on the head with the brand. They're not bothering with any of those, long left to right auto shots or the car going along the mountain highway or along the ocean that some version of those shots must have turned up in no less than 17 million auto commercials over the years and decades. It's quite refreshing content. It's quite different. It's almost more like branded content. And that would be the same with the Mountain Dew ad that we showed at the beginning. Again, wouldn't even really call that an ad, call that branded content. The Mountain Dew bottles were a bomb. And again, here the car was a prop in a film production, again, very appropriately running on the Academy Awards. And I think that over the next 10 years, among other things that are going to change out from under us, that we're going to see less and less ads. I think it's happening now. Again, this is not really a prediction. This is just what's happening now. We'll see fewer and fewer ads. We'll see more and more branded content. We'll see longer content. It's amazing. When the whole YouTube thing started, about 2 or 3 years ago, you'd go to an ad agency, and the statistics were clear. Keep your videos short. Don't let them run over 2 minutes. And there were the charts, and these, probably all of you have seen them, where they had drop-off rates when videos went on too long. Now all of a sudden, you go onto the viral charts, and you'll get these videos that are regularly 2 and 3 minutes, 4 and 5 minutes. We did some stuff for Unilever Cornetto that one called Cupidity for an ice cream brand. Went on for 10 minutes, won a Silver Lion. And so again, things that, there used to be rules of thumb in advertising that were really quite fixed. And again, these rules of thumb, I think they still exist. They're just changing quickly. And that branding will be less in your face. And possibly stories that are better told will become more common. In your Castrol ad, I mean, can you comment on that?
I think it's true for not just this one, but by and large these days, if the model used to be that you have good insight, then you go and create content, and then you push it down channels, I think now it's much more become you first need to have an engagement strategy with the communities you're trying to reach. So you find where the communities are, all the online communities. You find out what will interest them. Then you create something. And that's why the brand is not the way it used to be earlier. The brand sort of finds its way in. So not just in the MOFILM, but even stuff we did, like we did something called Blackout, which was quite cool middle of the year. It got to Wall Street Journal's top video of the month or week or something like that. And it was just about cars with our partners, Lamborghini, BMW, Audi, running in the dark with laser lights in the middle of Germany, and created a 3.5 minute video content. I mean, the brand is there somewhere, but it's not there in the way it used to be, where you'd see product cutoffs and stuff like that. Again, the science is developing, So like you said, there'll be lots of analysis these days from media buying agencies which will show that after 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, attention starts falling, and if the brand doesn't come in at a certain point, people won't remember. But I think we're being much more intelligent. Everyone is progressing in trying to, like you're saying, talk to communities, make them pull the content, and then the brand should be embedded in it rather than out there.
PlayStation?
I jumped the gun before, but go ahead, Jeffrey.
All right, here we go. So we've been making content for Sony PlayStation for a long time, and it's a classic reason why. I think if they're just doing their core games and their console, they may or may not have turned to our platform. But because they have the console, they have the handheld, and they have so many game properties, I mean, there's not enough big agencies in the world. If you gave, you'd have to give one each to produce the amount of content that they need. So they really needed volume. So we cranked up our platform. Obviously, our young filmmakers love making Sony PlayStation films. They love making game films. And we really started producing like 20, 30, 40 films a month for all sorts of different Sony PlayStation games, from Gran Turismo and to all the games that you're familiar with. And then the ad agency, BBH, great agency, by the way, one of the most creative, awarded agencies in the world. Their last film for Sony had a Lou Reed song in it called Perfect Day. It was just a terrific film. It won all sorts of Cannes Lions, and rightfully so. But like any agency, at some point on this year's campaign for this holiday season, they just ran into a wall, and they were unable to break through the creative idea in a way that the client liked. So the client turned to MOFILM and asked us to turn to our community and ask for ideas. So we weren't asking for films, we just went out and asked for ideas. And we got back 100 ideas, and of those 100 ideas, again, as usual, 90 were terrible, 10 were great, and out of those great ones came one, but it was super special effect laden. And I remember when we were looking at the idea, we go, wow, BBH is going to have a heck of a time producing this. And for whatever reason, when we tried to pass the idea over, it didn't work, so Sony came back to us and they said, you guys make it. I was like, we can't make this. You know, we have young aspiring filmmakers, and we're not going to make a $1.5 million, $2 million film. And the client goes, yeah, but, special effects, big deal. And I go, well, we do some, but not a lot. And they ask, well, isn't John Landau your creative chairman? I went, yeah. And then the client goes, well, doesn't he do some of the biggest special effects films in history? I went, yeah. I said, well, then go make the film. So we went over to John and said, hey, can you make this film with us? And, well, what did you say?
No.
That's true.
But then he said, please. I said, okay. No.
It is true. He goes, what, are you crazy?
I said, I have a day job, Jeffrey. I have a day job. But it was a great opportunity to, again, shepherd, people who can be the future of our industries. And I really do think it is an inclusive industry. And, I provided very little guidance. I mean, I provided some, but really they went out there and really did a phenomenal job. And at the end of the day, Sony was thrilled. And when you could thrill the client, you've really succeeded.
But it was interesting. We ended up crowdsourcing the idea. We ended up, after we had the idea, crowdsourcing the script. We had scripts coming in, because there's a lot of banter, as you're going to see. We ended up crowdsourcing the director, the producer, and then probably like traditional agencies, we got a special effects house and put the team together, and off we went. So this has got to be the most expensive crowdsourced film ever produced, and we won't do this very often, but especially with John Landau here in Singapore with us, we're very proud to show it. This is running on national TV in the run-up to the holiday season in the U.S., even as we speak. See, now I've gone out of order. Will this go backwards? No, it probably won't. All right, well, this is funny, actually. So I got one short film
I feel
here.
better now.
Yeah, there you go. We've gone and crisscrossed each other, but what I'm about to show you, this is a very good juxtaposition. So in the changing, I don't even know how to frame this against each other. Here we go. So in the changing landscape of distribution that we're looking at, we're experimenting both in new ways to get out on television, which I'm going to show you in 1 minute, and in new ways to get out on YouTube. And so we've now taken our platform and we've contracted with some very big cat channel properties, and we challenged our film community to come up with Back to the Future, Rewind, 10 years ago, cat videos. So this is a cat video that actually went up about 48 hours on a YouTube channel called Cat Hub, which we're working to develop, and it got 200,000 views literally in the last 24 hours. So this is a hilarious juxtaposition because one of our filmmakers from Canada basically made a cat puppet and filmed it on his webcam. So here you go. This literally cost zero money to make. First, we'll look at a cat video, and then we'll move on to PlayStation 4.
Ed! Yeah? Are you typing? Yeah? Well, it's 3 a.m. Okay. It's 3 a.m. Yeah, well, I had to get up and look up the word cat, and then look up the word nocturnal. Shut up. Hi guys, thanks for watching. If you click here, you can subscribe to the channel and see all new episodes. And if you click here, somewhere in the world, a dog will be treated with mild indifference. That's not going yet? Oh. Okay, well, we should work on that one. That'd be a good button to have. Indifference!
200,000 views, 24 hours. Who knew? It's where the world is going. I asked my daughter, who's like 20, why do you watch this stuff? And her shoulders kind of slumped, and she goes, Dad, I can't help myself. So I'm much more comfortable back in the old days, right? So now we're going to go on to PlayStation 4. This is the stuff I spent decades making, which we'll probably make less and less of, but it sure was fun. And here we go. This is not a cat video.
What you got? What you got? I got Kevin Durant. That's KD, all right. That can't be good. Hang on! Don't need to. These guys are everywhere! Where exactly are we headed? Just follow me, like usual. Shall we? Let's do this.
Thanks for your help, John.
Pleasure.
Coming back down to a little bit closer to reality and the planet Earth, we have another BP film to show. Sorry, go ahead.
Before you do that, tell them the story about Guinness and the film that they did, that they have a big market in Africa. And I think this is a fascinating story because you have outsiders making movies and making branded content for territories, but they don't have the voice of that territory. And through MOFILM, they gave a brand the opportunity to have a local voice that then made a big impact.
So Guinness beer is more consumed in Nigeria than Ireland, which is the home of Guinness. It's famous because the saying is, I think it puts lead in their pencil. I'll let you figure that out. And the issue that the brand team had was that all of the films they'd ever created for Guinness Africa had been written, filmed, produced in the West, in the UK or in the US. And the brand team, for the first time, said, you know, it's time to go to Africa and make our Guinness films. So we didn't have many filmmakers in Africa, but we took the brief, and one of our colleagues, Carrie Gaffney, I think she's in the back of the room, bravely flew around Africa from every corner you can imagine, Ghana to Nigeria to Kenya to South Africa, visiting production houses, film schools, and passing out briefs. I mean, almost like, you know, pamphlets in the street. And it was amazing, the reaction of providing the tools, the resources, the brief, and the opportunity. And we literally got hundreds and hundreds of responses, and we were not sure what we would get. But sure enough, the rules applied, that there were 100 or so films, 90 were okay, but not that great, 10 were amazing, and 3 are now running on across Africa on national television for Guinness. So very inspiring. And on the back of that, Unilever has launched an academy for young African filmmakers in order to continue the good work that Guinness began and give opportunity and resources and briefs across the African continent to build, I think they're put 4 of their brands into the program. So it's on our site if you want to take a look on MOFILM.com. It's the University for Young African Filmmakers. Very, very inspiring. So again, back over to BP. We have one more film to show, but just some last comments on how you see the future as you try out some of these new techniques in an ever-shifting world.
I just think to keep on trying all of them out, and I think even with these films that we've just made on the GTX and Castrol Magnatech, we're currently going into some trials in the US and India and then China, just to try them out like you normally do, throw them out 10 days on paid owned earned media, track them a little bit, amongst the films see which one is connecting better, and then try running with them. So the activation models will come. But the great thing is that there's always a hunger for content, particularly video content these days. And this is one source of filling them up. So I'm quite positive about it.
So I see a related question coming in. I'm going to hold it. Why don't we run this film, and then maybe I'll actually take a look at this question because it's relevant. So here's the second BP film that came in to the awards ceremony last night. Down here.
Pretty soon you'll be up there. You'll be going somewhere. I'll be stuck down here.
I want you to come with me.
I can't afford a ticket.
Let's just drive.
I'm gonna drive you back to school.
It'll be just me and you, 3 days in this car, and we'll do whatever we want. We'll be free.
I'm not sure when I'll be back. Fine, I guess you'll just have to find a replacement for me. What if we run out of things to say?
That's when you know you've really gotten to know somebody, where you can just sit there without really saying anything. You're comfortable.
I gotta find something out there for me. Can you help me?
We'll just discover things as we go. Things on the road and about each other.
Our boat. I want to experience things instead of just passing through them.
You can keep me warm. You can spoon.
It's just gonna make it harder to say goodbye.
Why don't you stay?
You're the only thing I have here, and when you're gone, I got nothing. I don't know if I can even make a decision like that. Is this the right thing to do?
Well, no, it's right. If that light turns green in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Again, all about storytelling, branded content. It's amazing how that type of video is transformed. So, Vivek, you mentioned the comment about you're going to try some different ways to distribute. And we have a question from the floor, which is, do you think that homegrown Asian brands that are trying to internationalize are ready to utilize branded entertainment as a tool? So, I think the question is a good one, and it's the same question as you might have needed to answer about advertising even 30 or 40 years ago. So on any piece of content that you create, you should start by asking who's going to see it and how are they going to see it. And at MOFILM, we actually, some of our, the case studies we don't like to talk about are brands that made some amazing content and then didn't know how to distribute it or didn't know what to do with it. For us, that's heartbreaking. You had a filmmaker, you had a brief, came up with this great content, and then it just has nowhere to go. Either because, you could say, well, why don't you just put it on television? Well, TV budgets are just so expensive. I mean, absolutely breathtakingly expensive. I think still very effective. If you look at econometric reports, a lot of people talk about the demise of TV, and we talked earlier about the shift to other devices, but still, big, well-planned TV programs, can really move the needle on sales, but they're expensive. And then on digital, I think the problem is the programs are more affordable, but the roadmaps and what to do with them are less clear. And you even mentioned yourself that you're going to be trying a few different things. And so in answer to this particular question, the better idea you have of where you're going to show that content, then the better idea it is to do branded entertainment. And we've had all sorts of interesting things like hotel group like Marriott that had us shoot what's exciting in the city around their hotel. So we had filmmakers from all over the world go to Rome and shoot the Marriott Rome, and those films ran in the lobbies of the Marriott. Great idea. Captive distribution, not very expensive, very unique. Branded entertainment, interesting to the guests. Same thing, we have some airline programs going on. So, companies like Emirates looking for, as you're landing in a city, shoot branded entertainment about that city. So whatever your brand is, be it Asian or any other nationality, you must think who's going to see it and where are they going to see it and can you afford them to see it. YouTube and Facebook are tremendous opportunities for that. But, you need a developed YouTube channel in the subject that you're interested in, either your own channel or somebody else's channel that you'll pay for and it's relevant and your content will sit on that channel it's worth paying for. Or on Facebook, the same thing. Maybe you have your own Facebook page. That's a great place to do it if you have a sufficient critical mass. So I would say the answer to that is, again, just make sure you understand before you even make the content, where are you going to put it, who's going to see it, and how much is it going to cost. There are a number of rules of thumb out there. If you're going to spend 100 on production, make sure you've got 1,000 to spend on distribution. Digital is a very good outlet, but you need to make sure you know how to do it, where to do it, and branded content is the future. That's probably where most of advertising is going to go. Any comment on?
No, I think whether it's an Asian brand, as it says, or a brand from anywhere, the source of the brand doesn't really matter. I think in the end, the way to communicate a brand is about having some content which people want to get access to, and then finding distribution or access channels with them. So if branded content is one of them, I think in all of them it's a question of, does it suit that brand? There are some preconceptions sometimes that people feel in certain certain communities or certain countries, people like more linear approaches to communication. And things which are like branded entertainment or sponsored content sometimes doesn't work there. I haven't found that really in my experience, because the big markets which are really big on internet now, places like China, Korea, Japan, the US, increasingly India. And I don't really find those sort of national or regional stereotypes really playing out. So I think if done intelligently, it can pretty much work for any brand in any geography. Assuming we have the right ways of experimentation and then KPIs, tracking, measuring, iterating, course-correcting going on.
So we have a flood of questions now, so I'm going to try and motor through a couple of the easy ones. How much does a video made through MOFILM cost? Don't we normally do priceless on stage, but I guess it's fair to say that you can get a portfolio of films. Thank you, John. That's why he's my producer. You can get a portfolio of films from anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, and the key is that it's a portfolio of films, not a film. How do you ensure filmmakers get compensated for a very expensive business? We used to just say, try and win a prize, and they do it on their own, and that had its troubling side, and we're very proud of our grant program. And again, this is thanks to the brands that we now go into every project with a grant pool and let all the filmmakers know that the grant pool is available and they could submit to win that grant. So that if they get a grant, that'll be covering all of their base costs, and then they can see if they can develop their film skills, if they can win a grand prize, if they can run on TV. That program has been...
But grant or no grant,
Yeah.
I think the real key of remuneration for these filmmakers is the exposure they get to the brands. They get to meet people at the brands. The brands remember them. The brands will look to work with them in the future. So it's about creating opportunity for them, and that will pay it forward.
I think if you can take just a micro example, talking about Andy Kellerman, who I was sitting next to yesterday, who made that film on Castrol Magnatech. I mean, the way he started out 2-3 years ago was just started throwing films at MOFILM. A few of them came into like in the top 5. He got into like a top 3 finish, and this is his first win. And he's now got motivated. He told me our next film, which we've given the brief for women drivers, he wants to do that. If he gets a few winners, I think he starts getting a portfolio, he starts getting a show reel, and then he starts getting business. So I think that's how he's looking at it, not in terms of the dollars per film. And
I'll tell you the story of John Waters. He submitted probably 10 films to MOFILM, and this is before grants, and never won any prize at all. And in a heartbreaking post on Facebook, it's still on our page, I mean, you'll have to scroll back 2 years, he said, I give up. I've learned through MOFILM I'm not good enough. I mean, it was really terrible to read. And I'm not going to do filmmaking anymore. You know, wish me the best. And literally the next day, a film he'd submitted for Dell Computers in a Brazilian contest came in 3rd place. And it's turned into legend, the John Waters story. In our meeting room in London at MOFILM headquarters, our conference room, we've named the John Waters Suite. And he's gone on to have a very successful production career. And I think that's a little bit to John's point that while, you know, money does matter, we all have to pay the bills. In the short form, in the ads, it's actually a very good platform for filmmakers. It's a relatively inexpensive way to develop your skills, to get better. And then if you really want to be more ambitious, then you can move on to short films, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And you want to make sure you're very, very skilled before you get into the very daunting task of making feature films. So, here's one for you, Vivek. How do you sell in branded content to marketers? Oops, just moved. How do you sell in branded content to marketers still obsessed with brand mentions and hero shots? You mentioned that. And I'd actually ask that maybe about your boss. Like, do others in your company, when you've come with this branded content approach, think you're nuts, or is the company receptive?
No, I think it's interesting. I find that this is something that sort of obviously interests me a lot. For the last 10, 15 years in the companies I worked in, Unilever, Diageo, and then BP, you find a lot of really good marketers, and I think some are able to make the leap to this world of uncertainty. And there's some who just don't. And they're very good at some parts of marketing, and I think for us who are sort of trying to guide their efforts, the important thing is letting people play to their strengths, because you can't actually transform everyone. There were some people who were really good at the sort of marketing that was required 15, 20 years ago, and they just can't make the leap into this world where you need to have this slight sort of lightness of touch, slight openness to new ideas, and willingness to make mistakes as you go along learning these new formats. But I don't think it's related to age necessarily. Some of us sometimes think it's people who are 20 who must be all digital natives and who can understand branded content, and people who are like 70 who can't. And I find very little correlation to age or the country they come from. I think it's something more psychographic, something more related to the way people process content in their mind.
So one last question, 5 votes for John Landau. What is your take on the future of brands in feature films? What's in it for brands in those classic ways of filmmaking?
Well, I think what's in it for brands is, you know, you build up a loyalty. You build up, you reach the masses. There's no greater way to communicate than the visual medium. You know, what you have to write 1,000 words for, you can say in one picture. And I think that's what we try and do when we make our films, is to communicate visually. And it always strikes me when I could sit there and watch a piece of content with no sound, with no audio, and it's still compelling. And I think you look back at the spots we saw today, many of them you could turn off the sound, it still has an impact, and the brand still registers. And I think that's very powerful.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.